I'm Victoria. Sitting in my new apartment, looking at the framed copy of my father's letter and the wooden toy box that once belonged to my sister, memories flood back. It was just a few weeks ago that I witnessed the shock and disbelief on my mother's face as she read the envelope I slid across the kitchen island. My mother had always been a material-minded woman. She was obsessed with a stable life, and when my father passed away, she seemed to lose all sense of morality. My stepfather, Henry, was a cold and calculating man. He worked as a district manager at a large electronics company, always focused on climbing the corporate ladder. My father, Robert, was an architect. He worked for a well-known firm in the city. He loved his job with a passion, and his designs always had a special touch, a small note in the corner saying PAP, which stood for People Are Priority. He would sit me on his lap when I was 8 and show me blueprints of hospitals, explaining how every line he drew was for the people who would use the building. He even gave me his old drafting ruler, which I still keep in my drawer. In 2016, my father started feeling unwell. He ignored the pain in his back for months. When he was finally diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer in early 2017, his 5-year survival rate was less than 3%. Instead of fighting a losing battle, he decided to protect what he could. He met with an attorney, Miss Grace Thompson, several times. She was recommended by my father's cousin because she had a reputation for handling complex estate cases. My father set up 2 custodial accounts, $600,000 each for me and my little sister, Ava. He also included a contingent remainder clause in his will, stating that if either of us died before the account termination, the share would pass to the surviving daughter, free from any claim by my mother or any subsequent spouse. There was also a separate document, Exhibit C, which my mother had to sign. It stated that if she used the custodial funds to buy real estate, the property would be held in constructive trust for the beneficiary. My sister, Ava, had severe asthma since she was 3. She used a nebulizer every day and carried a small pink inhaler in a pouch with a felt heart on it. After my father's death, her condition worsened. In 2019, her pulmonologist, Dr. Miller, referred her to a specialized children's hospital downtown. The cost after insurance would have been about $40,000 a year. But my mother told the doctor we couldn't afford it, even though Ava's custodial account had $580,000 at that time. The referral letter sat on the kitchen counter for weeks. I was 11 then, and I could sense that something was wrong. In June of that year, Ava had a severe asthma attack. The ER doctor told my mother that she needed to follow up with the specialist immediately. My mother promised but did nothing. On August 5, 2019, Ava had another attack while she was coloring at the kitchen table. I tried to help her with the nebulizer, but it was no use. I called 911, and my mother was upstairs. The paramedics took 12 minutes to arrive. Ava died at the hospital at 6:30 p.m. After Ava's death, my mother met Henry at a business event in 2020. He was exactly the kind of stable man she was looking for. They got married in 2021 in a small backyard ceremony. I was 13 and I wore black. My grandmother, Martha, who adored my father, refused to attend. She said she couldn't bear to watch my mother move on so quickly. At the wedding reception, I heard my mother tell Henry's mother, Mrs. Jenkins, and his aunt, Mrs. Harris, that Ava was a fragile little thing and that the doctors said there was nothing they could do. It was as if she was trying to justify her inaction. In 2023, Henry started looking at houses on Zillow on Sundays. My mother started talking about investments and resources. One day, I heard Henry say that if they could pull $280,000 out of Ava's account, they could buy a colonial house in the suburbs. They closed on the house in March 2024. I was at school taking an important exam when it happened. When I came home, the house was full of moving boxes. The master bedroom was taken by my mother and Henry. The second largest bedroom, which faced the morning sun, was painted pink for Henry's nieces. I was given the smallest room, which was barely bigger than a closet. On the night we moved in, I opened the closet of the pink room and found my father's wooden toy box that he had made for Ava. It was filled with Ava's things, a teddy bear, a coloring book, and a hospital wristband. 3 days after my 18th birthday, Henry announced that they were hosting a brunch for 9 of his relatives on Saturday. I was supposed to handle all the preparations and service, while my mother would host. When I saw the seating chart, my name wasn't on it. Henry said I'd be too busy in the kitchen. I started to suspect that something was wrong with the money. I did some research on the internet and found out about the custodial accounts. I told my mother I had a study group at a friend's house and took the train to my grandmother's. She had been waiting for me. She gave me a FedEx envelope from Miss Thompson. Inside were a cover letter, a copy of my father's will, the custodian acknowledgement signed by my mother, a forensic accounting of the custodial accounts, a court order, and a personal letter from my father. I decided to do the brunch first. On Saturday morning, I woke up early to cook bacon, eggs, and buttermilk biscuits. Henry walked through the kitchen and said I smelled like grease. The guests started arriving at 9:45. Mrs. Jenkins looked me up and down and said, "You're so obedient, dear, for a girl whose father died and whose little sister wasn't worth saving." I held back my tears and just said, "Thank you." During the brunch, a little girl named Emily asked me about the toy box in the pink room. I told her it belonged to someone who wasn't here anymore. My mother just brushed it off as an old box. That night, after everyone left, I went into the pink room and opened the toy box. I found a note from Ava that said, "Dear Vic, if I disappear, remember the box is from Daddy. He said it's for keeping the things I love. I love you and Teddy and you love Ava." I stayed up until 5 a.m. reading my father's letter. He explained everything about the accounts and the trust. He said he wanted to protect us from anyone who might try to take what was ours. The next morning, I slid the envelope across the kitchen island to my mother. She started reading the cover letter, and her smile faded quickly. As she read through the documents, she realized that the house she and Henry had bought with Ava's money was now legally mine. She tried to make excuses, but I asked her about the Lurie referral and why she said we couldn't afford it when Ava had so much money in her account. She had no answer. Henry came downstairs and read the documents. His face turned pale. He knew there was no way out. I went to Ms. Thompson's office on Monday. She explained that the default judgment was final, and my mother and Henry had 2 choices: sign a quit-claim deed voluntarily or face a public auction of their belongings. By the end of the week, they hired a lawyer, Mr. Smith. After a short mediation, my mother and Henry signed the necessary documents. The new deed was recorded, and the house was officially mine. Henry's family distanced themselves from them. Henry left the house, saying he was going to his brother's. My mother came to my room that night and apologized, but I couldn't forgive her easily. I signed a listing agreement with a realtor and a lease for a 1-bedroom apartment. My grandmother co-signed for me. I made a donation of $50,000 to the Children's Hospital in Ava's name and started a scholarship at my university in my father's name. Now, as I sit here in my quiet apartment, I know that I've taken back control of my life. The column that my father talked about, the one that holds everything up, is now in my hands. I won't let anyone take that away from me again.